Thank you for this opportunity. Some things were said and introduced. I'll just add on to it before I go and share a lot of my own life journey stories. The life that I left before was a very smelly life. I did all kinds of things that you can purely imagine that would probably get me to be burned in hell 100 times over. And sin life is very delicious. It is like eating a juicy mango, and can you imagine eating a juicy mango, and it's so ripe, it's juicy. But sin had its consequences. But what changed? When I winded up in prison, what helped me to change, to have a different life? I was not a good father. I was the most terrible husband a wife can ever imagine. I was not a good son. I was not a good brother. There was an emptiness in me that never built a foundation for me to be. But something happened in prison. I had 3 stints of prison sentences. A total amount of years that I spent was about 12 years. The last was 8 years. What happened in the last 8 years of my life that changed and transformed me to let me be at this platform, because I'm blessed to be a blessing to bless others? What changed? I made a choice. I came an encounter with a living God, and it was a choice I made not knowing what I'm getting to. But it was a choice that I don't regret the single day, because at the age of 41, I came out, walked out from the prison, a free man. I had a few qualifications. I have only a secondary education, and I still have a secondary education. I was a bankrupt, which I can't do much. And I was 41. With nothing but baggage, broken relationships, trust, distrust, 2 daughters who have never spent years with the father. So it was a little mess. But when I left the prison to freedom, the first thing that I did outside the cell where I could see my wife waiting for me, I went down to the ground and I kissed the floor, and I said, and I looked up and I said, which you could probably imagine what I would have said. I said this one thing I remember very clearly: thank you, Lord, for I am grateful to be a Singaporean. Strange, isn't it? But as I share the journeys of my life, you probably could connect the dotted lines. And from there, you will see that we worship a living God. The word agape honors my wife. Agape means unconditional love. My wife waited for a very terrible person for 12 years. She was not a Christian. I was the first Christian that came into my family. But yet, my wife waited. And in order to honor her love for me, we call the company Agape. So the company was built. Earlier, the introducer was sharing that I run a contact center. We run 3 lines of businesses. And our business are for profits, but has a very strong social story in this. A 24/7 contact center that we have in Tai Seng. Then we had in the Singapore men's prison. Yes. We have a 100-seater call center in the Singapore women's prison where men are not allowed to go in. Even male officers are not allowed. But how can an ex-convict like me? You will see it has nothing to do with me. It is all about God's grace. When I was sentenced in the prison in the year 2004, my wife, my children, my siblings do not want anything to do with me, because it was not the first time. It was the 3rd time. And it was a very difficult period. I had no visits. My family dissociated. My children don't want anything to do with me. And I remember that day when I was sitting in the cell alone, as months passed by, I wanted to do the one thing that when you are in trouble that you want to do, when you have up against the wall. You can't move left or right. And that is to end your life. I'm sure that some of us, or just like me, have been cornered down into a place and position we can't move, where we find that we just don't want to be the burden, or we can't go through this process. And the easiest way is to say, He has come to steal, kill, and destroy. Did I try killing myself? Yes, I did. Was I successful? No, I wasn't. So in that, I was clueless, and I don't know what to do. However, in the year 2004, as the year was coming to an end, I remembered a pastor that I met in 1994. I even remember for the first time, because one of my clients, who was a Christian, because he is my client, right? So anything to get his business, he asked me to meet the Dalai Lama, so I will go. That's how we operate. That's how the DNA that I had. So I went on a Saturday, sat down at Burger King in Orchard. At the time it was 10:30. And this pastor, an old man, was talking about God's love. And it was the longest 1 hour of my life, thinking, how can I finish this? It was so long. But one thing he said to me in the year 1994 at 10:30 on a Saturday in a Burger King, Christianity is about love. That's the only thing I remembered. Nothing else I remember. And whatever that we were taught in St. Andrew's School, I was from there, but you don't remember that much. He said, Christianity is about love. At that point in the cell, this person came to my mind. And the picture was so clear. And I was thinking, then I realized I have broken every relationships, dishonored the marriage bed, have done everything that is, and I've broken the one thing that is so sacred, love. And he said Christianity is about love. That's the first thing. That was the first sequence that reminded me about this. And then in the prison yard, we had the prison yard, right? We will be sitting down and we will be able to walk in the yard for recreation for about an hour. So I was in a maximum security prison where people served 30, 40 years. And the time I was sentenced to 8 years, I was considered as an incorrigible convict, where I don't get remission, straight out 8 years. It's that bad. That's how I was evaluated. So over there, places like that were mostly run by gangs. If you're not a gang member, you are asking for, because I call the old prison and a new prison. The old prison is a breeding ground. It's a dengue ground that makes you graduate to be a better criminal, a better smart person to do all the wrong things. And the new prison, which is different, it is more relational, where a new breed of officers. And when did that change came about? I'll come to that story. In the year 2004, this is the change that's going to happen here. Suddenly, right, there was this announcement made by the officer telling to all the inmates, we are giving you a letter. And in the letter will accompany a yellow ribbon. We all know the story of the yellow ribbon, how Jason Wong, God inspired him, how God touched his heart, and to make this movement. 2 days ago, I was just having my fellowship with him. So I look at the yellow ribbon and the letter, I tell him, what kind of stupid thing is this? What kind of stupid thing is this? But you know what? As an inmate, you don't get many privileges, and getting a letter is to write. So I write the letter to my daughter, and I put the yellow ribbon. And what? I wanted to write this, I wanted to write that. But somehow or other, the letter that was full, I only wrote a half. I still have the letter. I also have a book that's out in the bookshops right now. In that letter, all I did was asking forgiveness. But before I asked forgiveness, I had about asking something else. And the next day, as I was walking in the prison, a guy told me, hey, do you attend any religious services? I say, no, I'm not a Christian, So I'm the firstborn in my family, and, I was devoted to the Hindu gods, and, like that. Hey, you know what? Sunday, good to go for the Christian service, because two things 3 things you can get. I said, what are the 3 things? First, every Sunday can go out for 2-3 hours. Second, Easter Day and Christmas, all the girls come, very pretty one, no. Third, you got chocolate to eat, drinks to eat, cake. These were the 3 motivating factors to ask people to go. I said, okay. I was attracted to the fact that I could leave on a Sunday for 2-3 hours just to go. Then, I had to put a number before that the process of request will come. And then the next day, someone passes me a Bible. You know, when you're locked up for 23 hours in a cell, and you got nothing to do, if you give me even all the 5 religious books, I will read, because I got nothing to do. Right? I got nothing to do. And I read this NIV Bible, small one, and I was reading this portion. I kid you not. When I read the book of John, that portion, right? As I was reading, my hairs was rising. I remember I took the Bible and I flicked it against the wall. Why? For the first time in my life, reading those passages made me feel naked. You know how that feeling, maybe some of us have experienced that? I felt so naked. Like, I'm exposed before this. Why is this word exposing and reading me? It's like the Harry Potter books, it comes alive, The phoenix will come out and fly. Yes, I'm a Harry Potter fan as well. I read the books as well. It was that kind of situation. I didn't touch the Bible. Then again, when you got no choice, when you got 23 hours, you can't go out. No matter how many times you throw, you'll still pick up and start reading it. And then I came to a passage that said, at that state of my mind I was like, I have no visits. My family is disconnected. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I have a long journey of another 7 years to go as the first year passed. It was a terrible moment. And yes, I wanted rest. I wanted rest. And situations in the prison was not so good for me because I'm not a gang member. I'll just sit down there and put my t-shirts so I can go running. I'll come back, I'll find my t-shirts inside the drain. Got myself involved in fights. I just don't want anybody to bully me. It was a bad state. Come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest. My number was approved to go for Christian counseling after going for all this season of struggles and pain. I went for, and this verse was always ringing. Yes, I want rest. But where is that rest? Why come you're not giving? You say, come to me. I want to come. But where is the evidence? On that Sunday service, the pastor preached the same word. Come to me, all you who are weary laden. And it was, how can this be so connected? The word. And I was thinking something not unusual. And when the altar call came, and that was the moment of my life, that the beginning of change comes when I made that choice. I don't even know whether it's a real choice or no choice. What choice? I just don't know. I don't know the God. I don't know this Jesus. I don't know. But the altar came. I just went forward. Knowing that, hey, this is what I just read. And I just connected with that, and I made that choice to go in front. And that was the beginning of my life. The first slide, please. Now, oops. Can I have the before? Yes. In this chapter, 1 Samuel chapter 22, verse 1 and 2, it's the story of how agape started. When I began to walk with God in prison, I was known as a hypocrite. I was known as someone who's not very easy to get along, because you know what, when you become a Christian, People expect you tomorrow to be the transformed person. It's the reality. It's the reality. But even today, as a Christian, I am work in progress. We are being perfected. We are not perfected. I will still make a mistake. I walk out of this. Someone honks at me, I may just get irritated. So you see, we are work in progress. So I was hungry. I wanted to read the Bible, as I say, 23 hours a day. You read. You have all the time in the world. I begin to read the Bible from the Genesis right to Revelation. I begin to download the old Macintosh software and upload the Microsoft one, so that my mind will be strong. And you know what? Not being very well schooled, the Bible is the best place to start and learning. And when you speak out to yourself, you can hear. You see that's where my beginning of even improving English or writing and speaking started. And the Psalms and the prose are the best for me, because they're very nicely written, because it's a seasonal thing. So whenever I came to this passage, something happens. Time stops. Time stops. And over here, sorry, I just did not tell you the other portion of it. The yellow ribbon letter, I wrote and I sent it to my daughter. A movement that Jason Wong started. God used him as a steward, right? One day my name was called. You have a visit. So in prison, the visit cubicles are like 5 here and 5 the other side. So there's this like thick glass kind of thing. You can use the phone and talk. And families will come in one by one. And you are allowed 20 minutes, 1 month, 2 visits. 1 month, 2 visits is not a cruel thing. It's the right thing. Because for the families to come visit us every day, it's a stressful thing. They work. So 1 month, 2 times is good for the families. Later I begin to understand why it is good. First I would say it's very cruel. But now I say it's very good. Because a family needs to work and all that. Suddenly, a girl runs, shoom! Somehow or other, my heart beat because I knew it was my daughter. Then she turned back, she come back, she looked at me. And there, I see my daughter wearing the yellow ribbon that I sent to her. The yellow ribbon reconciled my family. So, this is the beginning of thing. And my relationship began to start to grow from there. So, yellow ribbon is very precious. I still have the yellow ribbon until today. As I mentioned earlier, I operate a 100-seater call center the size of 2.5 basketball courts in the women's prison. And I wear the yellow ribbon every time I go in. Because it's a story I tell about reconciliation. I need a purpose to connect and talk. Now, so when I came out from prison, God placed 3 visions on my heart, 3 things into my heart that I believe 2 have come to pass. One is akan datang, on the way, soon, couple of months, a year or so, but it's on the way. The first one was that whenever I read this passage, right, it says, David left Gath and escaped in the cave of Adullam. Adullam in the word of Hebrew is a place of refuge. A place of refuge. The first thing in my mind said that, hey, I want to build a place of refuge. When his brothers and his father's household heard about it, they went down to that. They went down to him. And all those who were in distress, as Pastor was nicely highlighting to me just now, distress, the first D, in debt, the second D, disconnected, the 3 Ds. I learned something from him today. Gathered around him, he became the commander, about 400 men with him. The story before and after, a quick one. The story before that, David was the second most powerful man in Israel because he married the first king of Israel's daughter. And he was well loved by the people because David was the ground guy, meaning to say he'd be down with the people on the floor. And he was well liked and respected. And that's the story. He was a wanted man when we are reading this passage. He ran because the king was just jealous. We know Cain and Abel's story. Because of jealous, we kill each other. So jealousy is a very serious thing that can actually consume us. So he was so jealous, he went there, he ran, he hid. But the interesting part, the 400 men in debt, in distress, and discontented. Doesn't that tell you about prisoners in debt? I was in debt. I came out of bankrupt. Distress, discontented. And you know what? In today's modern philosophy in a marketplace, it doesn't work. Why would 400 distressed, disconnected, and even in debt go to a man who's already wanted? Doesn't make sense, right? It just doesn't make sense. But yet, so from here, whenever I read this passage, time stops. Then slowly, the way God speaks to each of us, when a friend comes and says, hey, God wants you to do this, please don't believe that. If God wants you to do it, He will tell you. Others may come and confirm it. Others will come to confirm it. But God must bring onto your heart. So the idea was formed. When I release, I would like to set up a workplace so that the distress, the debt, the discontented can come there. I can create jobs. Wow, that's a tall call, because I had no money. Education, nothing. Experience, not much. But when you build your foundations on the promises of God, when God tells you, He will make from the lowly and He will lift you up. And you will know, and you cannot boast that it's you, it's God's grace. So I wanted to set up a small company where I can hire these groups of people. I set up Agape Connecting People Private Limited together with my wife. The seed money, my wife, and after I came out, she took all the family jewelry that her mother had passed it on to her, and she was able to raise $15,000. We pawned it at the shop. And by that point of time, she believed that I have my bearings right for the first time. And the relationship building did not start when I went out. The relationship building started when I connected. I made choice with God. And every 2 weeks, I'll write her a letter. And when she comes, I'm excited. I will share what I do. And as behind the walls, I was talking to her. I went for this service and I learned something of Bible. I told her. And when I was beginning to do this, she begins to see something different. So it's not when I went out. When I went out, it's a different story. So that's how the Agape Connecting People Private Limited started. And the second thing God, that I made this in the Bible that you saw, I was carrying just now, that God, I want to one day come back to the prisons to honor you as the leper did. Out of 10, only one came. The other 9, they're probably doing something else. So I said, I want to come back as a counselor. Very natural inclination to do, because I had the heart. But God did not send me as a counselor. God sent me as a business owner to the prisons, where I have access to the prisons on a permanent, and that's how it started. Now, the interesting part, becomes where it becomes more interesting. I started up the company, and about 1.5 years later, when we were starting to operate a call center, the first company we set up was in Peace Center, a very unusual place, but good place nonetheless. That's our beginning. So what happens after that? About 1.5 years, I got a call from the authorities. The Ministry of Home Affairs was telling me that, hey, we've seen people developing through your organization and the model that you use. And perhaps, they were asking, say yes. And they say, look, we have nominated you for an award from the ministry. I said, okay, this was a mentorship award that was actually being given to people who were able to help people succeed, the distressed, the one in debt and discontented. I said, okay. And the first time, my father, my mother went, where my wife and my children went, to see the son who has been in and out of prison so many times, see their son who only did a secondary school education, where all my siblings went to universities and have got wonderful jobs, who did the right thing in life. They saw, and when I took that award, and it was the beginning of another era. So one of the the guest of honor, who was actually one of the ministers invited, I think in the conversation, perhaps maybe you should go to prison and do something like this. I say, no chance. I say, why? There is a mandatory law that says you cannot go back to prison. Only you can do it after 5 years. And that was only my second year. Oh, okay. I'm sure we can relook this thing. 5 days later, a group of 8 people came to my office to talk to me. Now, there's this thing that you cannot, because there's a system, there's a mandated principle, policy, you cannot. And you know what? There was no longer 2 years. They made an exception. They invited me to go and see the whole, it's the size of the men's prison, 2.5 size of basketball court, to set up a call center. That was, okay, not too bad. So I said, okay, God, this is interesting, because when you know something, a law has changed like this to accommodate, you just can't let it go. Okay, I say, yeah, I'm keen. Then the second thing, I say, God, but I got no business. I got no business. Where am I going to get that kind of business to have 70, 80 inmates working for me, handling call center? And the truth be told, that even that, a client came forward. And the client came and said, just, I'm willing to use your services. And that client was StarHub. Okay, now got place, now got client, but I had no money. I had no money. I needed $500,000. Next slide, please. I needed $500,000 to set up technology, IT, all this. And my bank balance there was not even $2,000. So with all these things, I say the first 2 hurdles, but you know what? I didn't go into the third scenario thinking that, no lah. I say, hey, again, I say, God, how to tackle this? So in the middle of the night, I wrote an email to 10 different organizations, churches, foundations, and asking them, say I send them my business proposal. And the last one, number 10, I wrote to Singapore Pools. So nobody replied. But I got a reply from Singapore Pools. Hey, not bad, huh? Not bad, huh? Now they're returning back me with interest from the past life. So that was interesting. After they do the evaluation, I remember the officer, the COO, a gentleman by name of Dr. Chan Yun Lok. Okay? He was the CEO. He evaluated. I said, he came to meet me and my wife. He said, I don't think we can lend you $500,000, but I think you need $600,000. Oh, I say, okay. Then, so we signed the agreement and we took the offer. Now, the story gets more interesting, because, not interesting because of me, you will see how God is working. The day that I made that choice, when I went to the altar call, my life began to change. I am still work in progress, but everything started the day I made the first decision. Painful, but no regrets. And then I signed the prison lease. I hired the people. So we knew when the first tranche is coming. And then I'm supposed to go to mission trip with my pastor in India. I go there quite often with him. So, okay. And when we land the airport, but email came about 2 or 3 days later after we were finishing. It said, you know what not? We are pulling out. Hey, how bad can it get? How bad can it get? I re-signed the list. People left their jobs. They came to appointment. Then how? I told myself, I'm finished again. I'm back to ground zero. I didn't know what to do. But you know what? The one thing I knew, and that I still believe in, that my God is not going to abandon me. Never he has. He's not going to do, and he's not going to abandon me. So when I came back, first thing I called Dr. Chan, and I say, okay, Anil, you're back. Then I say, he called me, say, Anil, I believe in what you are doing. However, the management had decided otherwise. But don't worry. I have a childhood friend of mine on my personal contact. He said that I want you to meet them. One is from the US, one is from the UK. And they will come and see you in 3 days. One of them, as some of you all may know, Dato Kim Tan, over the Jubilee Gospel and season that he was quite active with, and Mason. They come from this organization called Garden Impact from the Garden of Eden. They came to see me and my wife. We had a 6 hours meeting. So after the meeting, they went to the site to prison to see, and we had a lunch. And here after finishing, Dato Kim tells, you know what? I don't think we can lend you money. Heart drop again. But there's a but. You know, even between cannot and the but, it's like the 1 second itself, really like, wow, everything gone, you know. He said, you know what? We want to be a partner with you. I want an equity. And these two are God-fearing men. So you see, I don't know these people. That Dr. Chan Yun Lok, who was with Singapore Pool at that time, currently, he's like a father to me for the last 10 years. And he is also my mentor and my chairman. He kind of adopted, he wanted to save me. So this is how the money came in, and we started the men's prison. And then we started the women's prison. Think for a moment, how can a bankrupt, a secondary educated guy with a prison conviction of almost 12 years, don't really know much about business, had no money, come to build a multi-million business today? In the next 1 or 2 years, we are bringing our business out of Singapore. We're also listing it locally as well in the SGX. So how does this happen? It has nothing to do with me. I am just a steward of God, willing to listen to the impossible and keep trying and keep moving forward. So the second line of business, apart from the contact center, we have a training academy. We are a WSQ certified training academy. We actually have a school, a premises. But very interestingly, that I wanted to do this, last year, sometime in December, I got a call from overseas. And I thought the lady was trying to sell a bank card or that. So when the story went out about the Singaporean of the Year, how an ex-convict is able to do what he's doing and the areas that we are focusing on, apparently it was a foreign institution, as you may have seen, it's like Barclays Bank. So I was asked to have a meetup, and in the meetup was to discuss how I did it. So what do I do? The audience who were participating were actually the key management players from the CEO and top leaders. I just shared my testimony. And I remember as I was sharing the testimony, the other person on the side, the Englishman, actually was shedding a tear. And they were moved. And they are, what can we do with you? How can we help you to reach your vision or what you want to expand? I told them that we're actually going to build a training school. And it took them 3 days to come back to us after they say, can you give me a proposal? And they say, hey, after 3 days, we would like to journey with you and give you this love offering. And to build a school, Singapore is not a cheap thing. God's grace. I know none of them. Okay, let's just see this video. When I failed my O-levels, I somehow rather ended up doing insurance. And I realized that actually I love interacting with people, and I was pretty good at it. I knew that if I could do this right, and I could actually succeed. But however, again, another phase of my life, I took shortcuts. You know, many people would like to achieve their usual ambitions in life. I too wanted this, but the thing is that I was willing to take a risk, break the law, and take all those shortcuts, and something was really, really wrong with me. For the first time, right, fear caught my heart. When I heard that I was sentenced for 8 years, I thought this was the end. And true enough, my family did not want to do anything with me. They had given up hope. I don't blame them. Then one day, the officers that came and rounded up all the inmates and were saying that, here, we are giving you a yellow ribbon. This yellow ribbon comes with a letter, and we would like to every one of you to send this letter home with the yellow ribbon attached. I was telling myself, what kind of stupid program is this yellow ribbon? But since it was being given free, I still took it and I wrote it. You can see this really old letter. I wrote this to my daughter and I told her that it's taking me a lot of courage to write to her. And I wrote to my daughter and say, will she forgive me? The yellow ribbon that I sent in 2004 and the letter is still here with me to remind me of this day, that how I took the first step. The purpose of Agape that I formed it is to provide a company where anyone with a background, whether he or she is from the prison or physically challenged or even any other stage of life they are, where they can come and they can flourish, they can work, they will not be judged by the condition or what they have done or what they are going through. So when I started Agape, I had little small pockets of jobs. And one day, I had a break. I got connected with this man called Joseph C. He was the vice president of StarHub. I was given jobs to do for StarHub. I started with 5 agents and eventually it multiplied and it filled the call center in the men's prison, in the women's prison, and even in the city office that we are now. We have changed a lot of mindsets. We have changed a lot of preconceived ideas. And I see a lot of companies today are open to hiring ex-offenders. People are accepting it. They don't view us with judgmental lenses. They look at us as giving us equal opportunities. It took years to establish, to come to the space, but we are here and we're here to stay. Next, not working. Okay. Isn't it strange that the CEO of the former Singapore Pools now is a chairman of Agape? Isn't it strange my first client, StarHub, the vice president of StarHub is my CEO? You see how God brings about peoples and connect these dotted lines for a common purpose. Agape is not about me. Agape, it's a place that's called Adullam, where people are growing, people are finding purpose, a place where they process their pain, where they rise up with dignity through employment, where there's a career progression. We'll see you not because of your resume, but we see you where you are at what state, and we groom you. And the third vision that God has placed in my heart, which is now work in progress, is setting up a sanctuary. I wanted to look at setting up a sanctuary for men, but God has brought me to a place that a sanctuary for women. Many women go back to prison not because of just crime. They go back into a toxic relationship, the place that's called home. That's a reality and things that data that may not be available. But I go in every now and then, I see this. The sanctuary is a place where they will be able to process their pain, a place where we're able to train them, give them employment, and all the building blocks are falling in place. And because he has not launched it, I would not want to go into details, how the various institutions, various MNCs and government agencies are coming together so that this dream too will come to pass. It is that day when I went to that altar call that I made that decision to know this man called Jesus, whom I did not know, and I have no regrets today. And from that day on, all I can say, as you have seen, a guy from nothing to coming, not about me, but it's all about God doing through someone not worthy. Our God is a great and mighty God. All He's looking for is the steward, the person who's willing to say, I want to go, I want to do it. The season that I'm going through right now is the one. Recently I was COVID for 2 weeks of reflect. I'm always running out in the front, but the 2 weeks of COVID did me good. Now I'm an Ironman for 250 over days, immunity free. Got visa for that. So as I was sitting down, I had a pleasure of meeting a few years ago this man that you may know, Mr. Lim Seong Guan, who was the private secretary of Lee Kuan Yew, founding father and chairman of GIC. So in one of the sessions, I was asking him, Mr. Lim, he also visited my workplace and the women's prison call center and all that. He also made a short video called Unbankable after he saw what I do. I asked him this guy, what is it for you to work with our founding father as a leader that he was, that nobody may not know? Because when you work with someone, there's something else that you don't be able to read. Then he said, Anil, one day he wanted me to go and deliver a message to a certain people. And right, for 6 hours, he sat me down and he had to tell me and I have to repeat. Tell, repeat, the same message for 6 hours. He told him, Mr. Lim, now you're ready and go. So what he was doing, he was telling one person, another leader, the message has to be delivered as per the way the visionary sees. Because message will always be misread, misunderstood. I see, in my reflection time, I say, okay. Then suddenly it hit me. As I was reading, this thought came to my mind, and I believe it was the Holy Spirit. It's a godly principle, you know or not? I say no. Then as I was reading, what did God did with Moses? 1-to-1. Okay, listen, the 12 tribes, this like that. The tabernacle here, the holy place here. He had to do the 1-to-1. You get it right? Then Moses got distracted. He went out, make some issues. Then he had to restart again. Then I'm in the season, I say, now the season is for me to begin to mold others so they can bring forth the vision of God. So this is my season and this is my sharing. Thank you.